Memphis track boy, let's go, let's go, let's go.
My Colorado swing, my Colorado swing, my Colorado swing.
Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com, joined again by football analyst William Gardner. William, last week we were talking about upcoming transfers that might commit. And I mentioned there's going to be some guys to talk about a week from now, and sure enough, there are.
Yeah, and some exciting ones too, as far as that goes. So you just kind of never. I think you never know with Coach Prime. Any given day could be a day you get a bunch of announcements or whatever, but he always seems to know in advance. I mean, he said as much in that one interview with you guys, where he gave his list of guys he wanted, and he said about half of them were on board already, without anybody knowing, so you never know what they got going on behind the scenes there, and maybe a kid doesn't want to have it announced at any given time or whatever, but I think we've added a lot of good pieces, and I think we've kind of narrowed it down to the parts that really need to be filled in the rest of the way.
Yeah, let's start with Kalon Taylor. He comes in from the Incarnate Word. He was a two-time all-conference selection, both as a punt returner and as a kick returner. Also an all-conference guy as a running back, explosive, 6 yards a carry this past season, 9 touchdowns as a redshirt sophomore. This doesn't scream necessarily lead back material, but a guy that kind of like, Dylan Edwards was for the Buffs, can be a kind of a difference maker as a smaller 5'9", 166 type guy that can do a lot of different things out there.
I think he's actually a lot more versatile than Dylan Edwards. I think he's a guy you can run between the tackles too, and I wouldn't have run Dylan Edwards between the tackles if I was carrying him. But
they tried, and that did not work well.
Yeah, and he's not really a running back. I think Kalon Taylor is older and he's more experienced and has seen a lot more college football, certainly not at this level. But I like watching his film. I like his body lean and his feet and his shiftiness, and can make people miss, and that explosive burst. So I think he has a lot. I think going to throw some gasoline on the fire. I think he's a good replacement for Colton Hood. And we can go in the next half an hour talk about that if we want. It seems that's going to be the topic of conversation for the next 9 years around CU football, Colton Hood. But I like Kalon Taylor as a trade for him. Absent the other issue there, but I like him as an addition to the offense and what he brings both to the running game, the passing game, and the return game. And I think he's in many ways a good replacement at a different position for Wester, maybe.
Yeah, so you agree with me? Like, Kalon Taylor is somebody that CU fans should be really excited to add in as a scholarship guy, especially given where their scholarship numbers are right now. But you wouldn't necessarily expect him to be the feature back, would you, this year?
No, I think that.
Does he have that capability?
What's that?
Does he have that capability to do that?
I don't know. I don't know. There's no specific reason that he couldn't, aside from his size, I guess. But I think you would expect Hayden and Welch to be those guys to carry the majority of the run game load, given skill set, size difference, what have you. Welch, to some extent, he's got to stay injury free and show that the good flashes he's shown is what he is on a larger level. But Kalon Taylor is a change of pace guy, or I don't know, even a guy on a first down, could really surprise a lot of defenses. I think we still need another running back or two. I don't think you're going to get through a season with the numbers we have right now, just because it's such a position that gets hit and beat up so much. But along those lines, Kalon Taylor, if you watch his film, he doesn't get whacked a lot. He has that ability to avoid those big hits. I think, and he's not going to guide at lower shoulder and try to take on an inside linebacker, for example. So I think he can do a lot of different things, and I think if we're going to actually, fingers crossed, commit to running the ball this year, he's a guy that can really help us do that.
And that's one thing that, like, Leonte Wester's size when he came in. It's like, how is he going to be this effective? But, like, when you're tiny your whole life, I think you kind of figure out ways to, like, minimize that contact, right? Because Leonte didn't really ever take on any of those massive hits that made you kind of hold your breath. Like he just kind of knew how to maneuver his body within all these big guys out there.
And I think with receivers, because when you're smaller, the passes have to be more accurate, and you're not going to, when you reach for a ball, you're not as stretched out and spread out as like say a Will Shepherd or something, who's much taller. So you're just a smaller target too to go along with it. Plus they tend to be so much more shifty and changing directions on a dime and things like that. I think it's hard to, you're not going to see them square up in a hole and smash into a linebacker. And they learn to play in a way that fits their body size too. So I think it's not that big of a deal, really. If we were old school running an I formation, he's not gonna be able to do that. But that's not what he does in the modern era.
I did a story on both of Colorado's incoming transfers from Tennessee via Ryan Callahan from Go Vols 24/7 Sports. He gave some great thoughts on both those guys' developments. I'm not going to step on your toes here, William. I want to dive into your notes here, especially with Larry Johnson III. I mean, this is a guy that dropped a lot of weight and played some significant snaps there at Tennessee. What are your thoughts on both those guys?
Well, I think Larry Johnson is an identical situation to who are our guy that we just lost?
Zach Owens.
Zach Owens, except that Larry Johnson's clearly an outside guy, and Zach Owens, they tried him outside, and it wasn't a perfect fit for him, but he became very effective inside. But they're both guys that have been in there a couple of years, lost 40 plus pounds, really started to show that potential this spring, and so they're both guys, both Johnson and Owens were guys who kind of came out of spring with a lot of looks on the number one unit, but haven't played it yet, so a lot of positive potential moving forward, but not a sure thing by any means, and so one of the things I think is always funny, not fun, but interesting, curious to me, maybe it's human nature, is the newest guy is always the best guy, right? In recruiting, so Larry Johnson on the board, I'm sure he is the greatest lineman that ever lived on the planet of the face of the earth. All those other guys that came before him, they suck dog balls, and they're going to not play in front of this guy. So I don't know. I think the better way to look at it is, you look at all that group of offensive linemen that we brought in this year, Okenby, Chrysler, Hill, Taimani, Johnson, and then Philip Houston comes back, and what I've seen of him recently, he looks fantastic. And you throw them all out there, you see who wins the position, right? And the thing that makes me roll my eyes and shake my head is the fools that say, oh, well, if we got to go into the season with Philip Houston starting, we're in trouble. Okay, we're not. Okay, because first of all, if that's the biggest problem we got, we're going to look pretty good. And secondly, because he's a pretty damn good lineman, he looked good last year and he'll look better this year. So I think Larry Johnson comes in and he makes that position competitive, which makes everybody have to work harder. And then when they go into fall ball, and we see who comes out of it as the winner, and you take a guy like Larry Johnson, and first of all, he has huge size and length and reach, and if he ends up being the starting guy on that right hand side, that's a hell of a pair of tackles between him and Seaton. We need to find a guy who can play on the left hand side too. And I hate to even say that, because if something happens to Seaton, somebody's got to play over there. We don't have backup now coming out of spring, it seems like. But so I think Larry Johnson's a great addition to this group, just like all these offensive linemen have been this off season. There's not one guy in this group that I would look at and go, well, he's a sure thing all conference guy, right? But every single one of them could be. Every single one of them could be, and we'll see what happens and try to get the best five out there. I think what's one thing that's funny that people don't seem to really kind of think about too much is that you got Tyler Brown and Kareem Harden coming back, both as guys who have started at times over the last 2 years, and they're kind of afterthoughts, and in terms of the depth chart and whether they're going to play or not. So I think we've added a lot to that offensive line. And I think we're going to fill all five spots with some pretty good guys, whether they're returning guys or new guys. So I think it's exciting. with him. And then I think, John Slaughter is a guy who brings a whole other, I think we were talking last week how much we need some safeties, and we had a couple of them in the last few weeks, 3 of them in the last few weeks, and I think they're all 3 going to really add to that group. Slaughter having played at Tennessee, has played against some of the best competition there is. He's got the size. All 3 of these guys we brought in are Terrence Love, John Slaughter, Noah King. They're all in the 6'2", 200 plus range. So it's, I think it'll be exciting and an upgrade to our safety room for sure.
I was going to ask you with Larry Johnson III, if you were in Vegas right now as an odds maker, would he be the favorite to start at right tackle for you right now?
Philip
2025. Still? Okay.
Still, he proves, because Philip Houston did it, and he did it pretty damn well last year. After he got his feet under him the last few games, right before he got injured, he was looking pretty good. Larry Johnson is still a little bit of a question mark because he hasn't done it in game time yet. So I still think, and I guess I'm in a minority, that a lot of people don't seem to, most people don't watch film of linemen and they don't know what they're watching when they do watch. But Philip Houston, to me, and especially having seen him a couple weeks ago and how good he's looking now, is still the guy to me. And I think, I don't know, I mean, Taimani went the whole spring there and finished out there at right tackle, and I think he'll keep getting better, so he'll still be in the competition as well. I think the nice thing is this lets us develop Carday Smith and not have to throw him out there before he's ready.
Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com.
William, everybody that listens to our podcast knows that we love the Hungry Toad. They've been bringing a taste of England to Boulder since 1991. At the Hungry Toad, they serve up hearty homemade fare from their scratch kitchen paired with a brilliant selection of British beers. They're the perfect spot for friends and family to gather, relax, and enjoy the warm, welcoming atmosphere. If you're mad for football, so are they. Whether it's the American gridiron or European footy, they proudly support CU football and CU women's soccer. The Hungry Toad, Boulder's local pub that's not on Pearl Street. Head to 2543 Broadway in Boulder.
And you know what? Hans Serrata don't take no whoopings either. He hands them out. How's that for a second?
I love it. And Noah King, you mentioned, transferred in from Kansas State, spent less than a semester there in terms of the football side of things. I'm sure he's finishing out the semester academically, but 6'2", 200, says the Buffs are recruiting him as a cornerback. I think this is going to be a safety down the line. But William, I think this is the first recruit I've ever covered, and it made me laugh when somebody pointed this out on the message board on BuffStampede.com, is that he went to go visit Miami of Ohio and Miami of Florida back to back. Yeah. And they're it's like he's trying to figure out where these Miamis are. But I'd never seen that before.
And I don't know much about the Miami and Ohio, but so somebody else was like, why did you leave Kansas State? Well, why in the hell wouldn't you leave Kansas State? What a shithole. I mean, and their program's not all that great, but I think ours has a higher trajectory. So why you wouldn't leave Manhattan, Kansas to come to Boulder is beyond me. But he's a guy that brings a lot to the table. And again, he's a young guy, and so it's all still potential for him. But whether he's corner or safety, I think he's going to fit in here and do some things for us, and we mentioned him and Slaughter and Love, and we brought in Tion Parks at cornerback, and so we've really added a lot to our secondary, in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you remember the days when our website would almost break when there was like a 5-star recruit that was interested in Colorado?
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Daryl Scott. I'm looking at you, Antonio Alfano. Who else we got to throw in there? Cormani, I guess. Who, by the way, Cormani, it sounds like he's doing better. He's matured. I'm still skeptical he can continue that up, but I would hope that he has a good end to his college career, because he was very young when he got to CU and had to maybe learn some lessons. But Hakeem Williams, a former 5-star recruit, chose the Buffs over Syracuse and Pittsburgh. Miami was going to get a visit from him as well, but he decided to give them the stiff arm after he took his trip to Colorado. Was at Florida State for a couple years. Not a big impact there, 21 catches over 17 games, but he did start 8 games this past season as a sophomore. A physical specimen, 6'2", 215, 3 years to play too. I feel like folks in Boulder have gotten used to this new level of recruiting that Hakeem Williams, and maybe this is a good thing, that people don't freak out as much as they used to over a former 5-star guy picking the Buffs.
Well, I think he fits a little bit more that what we used to get is the 5-stars that didn't work out someplace else, but I don't think he's necessarily that guy. I don't think that anybody really lit the world on fire at Florida State the last couple of years. So we bring him in here and he gets a new start at a new place and brings his skill set and size to kind of dude that looks like a damn linebacker.
He does. He's a physical specimen, like I said. Yeah.
So he's a different kind of a guy. You could actually line him up in an H-back spot and do some things with him in there too. But so he brings a different skill set altogether and continues to improve that wide receiver room and give those quarterbacks, whichever one ends up starting, some good targets out there. And keep bringing in more talent, more competition, and there's no downside to it. So I think it's great.
Yeah, no question. It just has been funny to observe like how quickly we've gotten used to this new level, right? Like we're just kind of like if you don't have 4 or 5 stars by your name, like I don't really want to talk about you.
Well, and also the demanding sort of, well, how come we don't have any commits this week? Oh man, Prime sucks. That receivers coach is not doing his job recruiting. That Marshall Falk, man, he hasn't brought in a 5-star yet. What's his problem? We should get rid of him. Exaggerating a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Well, the Buffs are currently number 2 in the Big 12 behind Texas Tech in both the team transfer recruiting rankings on 24/7 Sports, as well as the overall recruiting rankings on 24/7 Sports. And, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, they're throwing a ton of NIL money out there. They're living like they got a month to live. Like they are all in on the NIL. So Colorado being number 2 behind them, given what I've heard about what they're doing, that's where you want this program to be, I feel like.
Yeah, I think we're doing fine. I think we're continuing to improve the roster each year. I think we've done that. I think I see some people saying, well, this will be the first time we haven't improved the roster after a portal session, but I don't think that's true. I think we certainly have.
It's not over yet, too, by the way.
Right. And I think we've got a couple positions we still need to address in a big way, linebacker being the most obvious to me, another cornerback maybe, another running back maybe. But I think overall we got a pretty solid team that we put together. And Texas Tech can shove their tortillas up their backside when they have another 7 or 8 season. All their NIL money ain't going to mean a damn thing. A couple of years ago, A&M bought the best team in the country, and what did that bring them on game day? So people can live and die with that sort of aspect of it. But I think that our staff, everybody thinks it's an NIL game and it's just a bag of money, and it's not. But there's a lot of things that go into it, and one of the things our coaches are trying to do is build a team that works well together, where everybody's pulling in the same direction and they're all on board for the same kind of things, and that filling the needs that we have, not necessarily, hey, let's get this guy because he's got 5 stars, whether he fits our mentality or not. So I think they're more careful about who they're getting, which is not to say that we haven't lost a few in this particular cycle that we wanted, but and the linebacker from BYU, no.
That one hurts. I feel like that was one of those guys when you look at Harrison Taggart, is who you're talking about, who visited Colorado and committed to Cal out of BYU. That's one of those missing pieces that I felt really would have fit in what they need, and they can find another guy to do that. It's not over, but that was one of those commitments elsewhere. The running back from Cal that transferred as well and went to UCLA. That one I saw him as a feature back for Colorado. So there's been just a couple of those guys that have gone elsewhere where you're like, man, that really would have been a piece that could have helped Colorado over the top.
What sucks to me is those two guys both pick schools that don't play football, Cal and UCLA. You're not going to do anything at those schools. And I'm not saying that as a joke. I mean that quite sincerely. Both of those programs suck, and they're not going anywhere. They're not going to do anything at either one of those schools. Taggart, hey, buddy, I hope you like playing in front of 10 people and going nowhere. So I don't know. I mean, that being said, every kid goes on a visit and you don't know what appeals to them in that particular place. And it could be any of a number of things. If you want to believe it's a bag of money, go ahead and believe what you want. But, without being able to talk to that particular kid and have a relationship with them, you don't know what it was that appealed to him there. But it sort of sucks to lose a guy to Cal. That I can't even make any sense of. It's like, that's not a football school. Get the hell out of here.
They're in so much academic or just athletic debt, and they're traveling across the country. Yeah, I mean that was one of those where it was like, you really could see him being a difference maker out there with Martavius French and Reginald Hughes this year, that linebacking core. So that was tough to see.
I mean, given our situation, given his abilities, I mean, I think it's easy to sell him on, look, you're the missing piece in this defense that takes us to 9 or 10 wins. What the hell are you going to do? You're not the missing piece at Cal. They're missing all 11 pieces, man. You're one piece, and they got to find 10 more. So good luck. Have fun with that. Hope it works out for you. I mean, I guess I get it if you're from California or whatever. I guess if you're from LA and you go to UCLA or something like that, that makes some sense. But to go from BYU to Cal, first of all, just in terms of culture, man, how could they be much more different than BYU to Cal? But whatever, I guess screw him. See you, Detective Taggart.
Maybe we'll see him in a bowl game. I don't know if there are tie-ins with the ACC. I think there's at least one bowl game that has that. So
Cal ain't going to the bowl game, but nice thinking for them anyway.
Yeah.
I loved him on Beverly Hills Cop. Have a good future later.
Well, I was happy to see Trevor Woods land at Jacksonville State. It took too long for him to find a home, and he's actually going to be coached by Charles Kelly, who is the head coach there at Jacksonville State, which is not in Jacksonville, Florida, but in Alabama, where we've clearly seen that Charles Kelly he's a Southern guy. Like, he just didn't mesh well out here. And things have gotten very good for Colorado's defense under Robert Livingston, so there's no hard feelings there. And I don't know if Jacksonville State is ever televised, but I'd love to tune in to see how Trevor's doing, because hopefully he goes back to safety. He just was never natural at linebacker outside of special third down situations, in my opinion.
Well, I think he did pretty well at this level. I think he brought a lot to the table, and he did a lot of good things for this team. It's funny. It always sucks to me, when we got to piss all over a guy when he goes somewhere else. By
the way, I thought he was great as a safety at Colorado. I'm not saying that I wasn't a fan of his. Yeah,
I'm not saying you. You all know who I'm to out there. But I hope he does great, and I think he'll be a guy that's successful in life. I don't know that he'll have a future past college and football, but get your education and get what you can out of it, and then we'll see what happens with him. I don't know. He's got a sort of a unique skill set, I guess, and we'll see what he does there. And really not much else to say at that beyond that to sort of see how he does.
He's an engaged man now. Proposed to his now fiance last week, and so congrats to Trevor Woods. Again, I hope life serves him well going forward. Maybe we can get him on the podcast in the future. Cornerback Colton Hood has committed to Tennessee as a transfer. His brother, running back Brandon Hood, who you mentioned earlier, has been a talking point on our message board, just picked up a new offer from UMass. So it's looking like they might not end up at the same place, which kind of throws a little bit of...
Means they're full of crap. I just lose so much respect for a person when they say this is what it's about, when it clearly isn't about that. You didn't leave here because your brother wasn't going to be the running back guy. You clearly went to a place where your brother wasn't going, so you lied. So good luck to you. Dead to me. I'm moving on, man, from the Hood brothers. All three. I didn't know there was a third one until last week, but good luck to him.
He's a cousin, Trent. Yeah, linebacker. Yeah.
But it's like clearly that whole I'm doing this for my brother thing was full of crap and a lie. I don't know why you felt like you need to say that, but I'm sick of that whole situation.
Okay, we'll move along. There was a very exciting weekend for high school recruiting on campus in Colorado this weekend. 8 2026 recruits were on campus. And I just want to get your overall thoughts. Are there any of those guys that were on campus where you're like, man, as a Colorado fan, you got to put that high on your radar?
I don't know. Hold on. Anybody?
Maybe a 5-star offensive lineman with the last name that starts with O.
Any of these guys look interesting? This is the kind of visits. So it struck me when I saw this list. This is the kind of visit Saturdays that I think everybody expected and wanted to see with Coach Prime, right? And this will not be the end of it by any means, but I got it up on my board right now, and you got like 1 5-star, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 stars, and then you got a bunch of you got several 3-star guys who were like 1 point away from being a 4-star. Clearly, there's a focus on offensive tackles here because you got Felix Oho. I love that name, Felix Di. Felix Oho, 5-star offensive tackle. You got Brett Colajay, who's from Colorado but playing at IMG, also a tackle. You got Deacon Schmidt, who's 6'5", 320. I think is pretty clearly an inside guy, but could play tackle, I think. So clearly, and unlike in previous years before Coach Prime, you might get a guy like a Colajay and a Schmidt to visit, but they weren't coming, man. Any of these guys could come, and it wouldn't be surprised for me to see any of these guys commit. I mean, Deacon Schmidt keeps coming, you know what I'm saying? In terms of visits, he's been here 3 or 4 times now. So clearly we have caught his interest. We got that IMG Academy sort of pipeline now with Colajay, and he came with his teammate Jake Krull, who's an edge who looks pretty exciting. But Felix
real quick, I don't mean to cut you off. Like, if a couple of these guys commit, would that change the narrative with Gunnar White?
Well, I think the narrative with Gunnar White should already be changed. I mean, you keep talking with the interviews with these guys, and it's interesting to me. He's the one they keep mentioning that I've seen, and I can't remember specifically. But when they talk about, it's always Coach White said this or Coach White said that, So I think I don't know what the narrative is necessarily with Gunnar White, but I think that that 3-headed coaching thing still needs to prove they can get the job done. And I think if you look at the list of guys on our offensive line this year, this is the most. And I know some dumb jackass will misconstrue this on the board, so let me be very clear about this. There's enough talent there for us to have a good offensive line if those 3 coaches do their job and get them prepared and get them out there to do it. Now, will that happen? Damned if I know. I wouldn't project a good offensive line unless we had 5 or 6 of them in a row at this point. But there's enough talent there, and I think I saw enough in spring to see that they're doing some good things with these guys. So I think to get these 3 offensive linemen of this caliber on campus in the same weekend is a pretty darn good thing, good talking point, I think, for Gunnar White and Andre Garreau and George Hageman. So that's a pretty good group. Now they got to nail it down and get some of them. And they got to get a commit from some of these guys. KJ Edwards would be a hell of an addition at running back. So it's pretty exciting to see this kind of a group of guys come on. The afterthought of this group is Gavin Mueller, who's probably as good a tight end as we've had on campus in a long damn time, and not even talk about him. So
yeah,
it's
he just started
exciting.
playing football last year. I feel like
Yeah.
he's one of those guys that by the time he actually signs his letter of intent, is going to have everybody coming after him because he's a physical freak. He really is.
Right, 6'5", 260, and let's please not make him an offensive tackle yet, because I think he really is a legit tight end.
He's super athletic for his size. He's going to be a difference maker. That I don't care that he's a 3-star guy. That is not a 3-star recruit, and he won't be. It just the pure exposure factor that he didn't really kind of get that jump start into the recruiting process as early as some of these guys we see that are freshmen, sophomores getting offers. He didn't play organized football until last year, so no, the ceiling is very high there.
And he's from Illinois, which is not necessarily Illinois and Chicago and what have you has some really good football. But it's typically, Notre Dame and Michigan and Illinois and those schools but the Big Ten schools are all over it. But he's looking at LSU, Colorado, Wisconsin, Notre Dame as his top 4, I guess. But I think we got a great shot with him, and I think he's a hell of a prospect. So it's really an exciting group to have on campus, and I think that's going to keep on happening. We've got more coming up next week. Already looking at some guys that are darn near 5 stars at skill positions, but I don't know what that is. Hold on a second. Was that me or you? I don't know.
I think that's on your head. It's fine. Yeah.
Anyway,
you're good.
I don't know. I think the high school recruiting. I think people are a little bit nervous about the high school recruiting, and they ought not to be. So it's coming along, and it'll happen.
I mean, especially nowadays when you have, not to pick on Noah King, but he spent less than a semester there. Adrian Wilson spent less than a semester at CU. They hit the portal. You want to get jazzed up over high school recruiting in my spot doing this job and as a fan, because that's kind of where it's fun to hope that this guy that you followed, and I think Jordan Seaton will be one of these examples of a guy you kind of followed through that whole dramatic recruiting process. You saw them develop, grow into a man, and you get to watch him go off, and it's beautiful. It just does not happen that often anymore, unfortunately.
And I think at CU, we're going to have that sort of feeling of, every 5-star should be Jordan Seaton and Travis Hunter. Okay, and some of them take longer to get there. I would say you look at our team, and Savell Smalls was a 5-star guy, and he's going to be a damn good tight end in his final year of college football. I think he was always supposed to be a linebacker or an out defensive end or an edge guy or whatever, but he has found a spot and he's worked himself into that spot, and I think he got a future at it. So. Lots of different ways for a 5-star guy to develop. I think that if you look at a Felix Ojo, I think everybody, one thing about Felix Ojo is not going to come in and start next year at left tackle. Barring a very tragic thing, but that gives him a year to develop, and he can still be a multi-year starter, or maybe he starts at that right tackle because or competes with Smith next year, because most of those guys can be upperclassmen at that right tackle spot. But I think we're starting to address in high school our needs along that offensive line, offensive tackle spots, and I think you can really get a early participant at tackle more so than at guard, because tackle relies more, I think, on length and athleticism and technique than just brute size and strength. And sometimes it needs some time to get that brute size and strength at guard and center.
Yeah. Any other thoughts here to close out this show? Obviously, by the time we record again, we're hoping that Colorado has a prep recruit committed in this 2026 class. Damata Pecco Jr. did commit in the 2026 class recently from Ventura College. He is a son of CU's defensive tackles coach, Damata Pecco, of course. Any other thoughts here? Any other things that are kind of weighing on your mind as far as Colorado football before we venture into next week and again kind of have another list of recruits to talk about?
No, I don't think so. I think we've kind of gone a couple weeks without any kind of stupid national media story about.
Thank God. This is kind of fun, huh? We just talked football all the way through, right?
Right. Yeah. Although, like, I don't know, I'm kind of calm and mild mannered. You didn't poke me any of my buttons and poke me with a stick or anything and get a good. We seem to get more views, I think, when I go off the rails.
Well, let's throw on some black hoodies next Sunday and like just whatever we can do, like an airing of grievances segment on this.
Festivus, airing of grievances.
Festivus, yes.
Have to
we'll throw a poll up back here. We'll do feats of strength. I'll wrestle my boxer who's over here sleeping on my couch here. We'll get into the Festivus mood next week.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have a new sign up on the wall back there next week. So
okay, nice. Okay. So the fan's going. You turned the fan off a couple weeks ago, but it's been back on. What's the theory behind the fan?
Whether I'm cold or not.
Okay. Fair enough. That reminds me of back in. He's not somebody that CU fans really want to hear about, but back in 2019, when Mel Tucker coached at Arizona State with the Buffaloes in shorts, and we asked him after the game, why were you wearing shorts? Just because it was one of those things that went viral. And I really didn't understand why. I'm like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big deal, but it's happening. So we got to ask. And Mel Tucker said, it's 110 degrees out there. Of course I'm wearing shorts. Like, very, very simple response. And now Mel Tucker is somewhere in another country hiding from a subpoena and probably wearing shorts in 110 degree temperatures down in Costa Rica.
Probably not Costa Rica. Too many Americans go there. Probably like, who knows? But
if you were Mel Tucker, where would you go?
I don't know, someplace where they have extradition. I don't know. Although okay. I was going to say something, but that's going to open up a whole can of worms.
No, I'm not trying to get you in trouble here. Sorry.
Hey, listen, anybody out there think I worry about getting in trouble? I just don't want you to get the nasty grams from the people, that don't, the public.
No, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you.
As Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. I don't know, if I'm too cold, if I'm too chilly, I could put on a hoodie, I guess. But if I don't know why the damn fan was off a few weeks ago. They got some crazy tangent. I don't know.
So we need some more commits to talk about. That I guess that's the end result of the.
You need to play the song, man.
Yes, I will close out this show because you know what? It's been a few days since these commits rolled through, but it was raining commits earlier this week. William, I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody out there for tuning in.